Hi, looking for inspiration, more information, and of course, references for my book called Broken Hallelujahs, which I believe I mentioned in my first video. I came across a beautiful book by Philip Yancey called Where is God When It Hurts? Here it is. I like how the author presented his arguments, and so I decided to discuss with you some of the chapters. Of course, it's not only because I like the book that I am sharing it with you, but I'm also very much aware that times are really tough these days. The discussions herein are important and timely. So today, we're going to talk about the book and the first chapter. Of course, I'll be supplementing with whatever comes to mind. So here we go. Where is God when it hurts? Obviously aims to give an answer to this perennial question. Yes, this question has been raised by a lot of people throughout generations. This didn't arise only recently with the popularity of philosophers and researchers. It is something that bugged people even during the olden times, when we, modern people, think societies lived in such a religious atmosphere, they'd easily bow their heads to everything they hear without question. The truth is, I find the people in the olden times more critical, analytical, logical, probing or investigative, and methodical, so that they stand firmly on principles they decide to embrace. These days, many of us seem to sway from one belief to another. We're more affected by what gets more votes, likes, hearts, comments, shares, etc. We strayed so far from what matters most. Understandably, we resort to these to get our minds out from our troubles. Nevertheless, instead of connecting with each other, gaps are made and more problems arise. We are actually hurting each other more than we want to. These are all evident in social media platforms. It is for this reason that I finally picked on what my colleagues have been pushing me to do for years. And it is also the reason I picked this book by Philip Yancey. In his attempt to answer the question, which is the title of the book, the author opens with a chapter that pictures how Americans generally view pain. That is, they have little understanding of the subject matter. But I think it is true to many of us, especially to those who were raised with the influence of American culture and Christian perspectives. Americans, as the author pointed out, have inadequate understanding of pain because as a giant in economy, technology, and the likes, they experience more success than most of other countries and races. Perhaps the poorest and most unfortunate American is far more blessed than a middle-class person from a third-world country. And yes, there might be some who will disagree with my statement, but that is just the point. The most unfortunate American might think he or she has the worst problems when in fact there are those who are troubled with more. The same is true in Christian communities because there are a lot of preachers who bombard their followers with feel-good messages so that it's difficult for them to understand pain. In contrast, the Jews are quite pragmatic. They actually have a more realistic view of pain and approach to grieving persons. Biblical characters who experienced great challenges such as Job, Jeremiah, Hosea, David, and many others are perceived from the Jewish point of view as examples in understanding the emotional, psychological, mental, and spiritual struggles people go through, and using such knowledge and understanding in dealing with grieving persons. From the Christian perspective, and similarly with the American standpoint, they are used as encouragements in the form of sugar-coated, flowery sermons or philosophies. Yancey pointed this out with the story of his friend Claudia as an example. Claudia was diagnosed with Hodgkin's disease and cancer of the lymph nodes. Just a year after her marriage, she was supposed to have a 50% chance of living. The author tells about how some of Claudia's friends visited her with words of encouragement, such as, "God has a purpose for this. Everything happens for a reason." I myself have heard similar words during my struggles, and I witnessed this many times. In fact, I myself uttered those words when I was actively involved in church activities. Words like, "Behind the clouds, the sun is still shining," or "There's a rainbow after every storm." In other words, you'll have rewards after all these sufferings. If not here on earth, you'll have them in heaven. These are reassurances uttered with good intentions. They're meant to encourage and uplift a grieving person's spirit, but the truth is, they confuse us and make us question the goodness of God. This is because when we are grieving, we have questions which may seem new to us. We still can't put them into words nor identify them, especially when the shock of the situation is still strongly felt. We tend to ask, if God is omnipotent, why do I need to suffer this and that? Isn't He strong enough to stop these pains? Why can't He heal the suffering people around the world? Why can't He let the rains pour to quench the thirst of the dying people in the desert? Why can't He stop the rains to prevent the death of many people near the coasts? Such approaches surely made Yancey's friend question God and His godness. I did too, and I think a lot of people experience the same confusions as well. Perhaps there's something we could do aside from simply throwing encouraging words to really help the heartbroken with their sufferings and griefs. These are what I have been sharing with my friends whenever the chance presented itself, and they are also the reasons why they have been encouraging me to write a book. While I had a list of titles, some with drafts, I chose Broken Hallelujahs because it's one of the books I've been mulling over through the years. And I do believe that we should look into the lives of the Bible characters more closely. We shouldn't try to view their lives from a detached spectator's point of view. And this is evident in Broken Hallelujahs. In Yancey's book, the author mentioned some biblical characters sporadically, but he shared real stories of modern people who have gone through more terrible encounters than we ordinarily experience. His approach is straightforward and enlightening. I'm excited to share with you the gems I have learned from this precious book. So again, in the first chapter, Yancey showed the importance of the topic of pain through the experience of Claudia. It is, as the first chapter title suggests, a problem that won't go away. And indeed, pain is something that has been here for many generations and will perhaps never leave for many generations more. Before we end this discussion, I just want to read an excerpt from C.S. Lewis's book called A Grief Observed, which is used as a preface for the first chapter of Yancey's book. Here it goes.
Meanwhile, where is God? This is one of the most disquieting symptoms. When you are happy, so happy that you have no sense of needing Him, if you turn to Him, then with praise, you will be welcomed with open arms. But go to Him when your need is desperate, when all other help is vain, and what do you find? A door slammed in your face, and a sound of bolting, and double bolting on the inside. After that, silence. You may as well turn away. Before I continue, I just want to share a little background about C.S. Lewis for those who never heard about him. He was a notable British philosopher during his time, an Oxford Don who later became a professor of Cambridge and a famous author who wrote the series Narnia. He was an atheist who converted to Christianity as a result of his search for truth and the meaning of life. During the latter part of his life, he met an intellectual American woman, Joy Gresham, who paralleled his wit and whom he later married. Unfortunately, just a few months after the marriage, Joy was diagnosed with cancer. Miraculously, she outlived the number of months the doctors said she'd survive. The couple enjoyed a few years of being together. By the time Joy died, Louis grew deeply attached to her. He suffered greatly. A Grief Observed is a book he published under an assumed name, which his stepson, Joy's biological son, Douglas Gresham, republished under the author's real name posthumously. The said book was written while he was grieving over Joy's death. His words were really raw, and one can feel the pain and suffering he went through during that season of his life. I wanted to share this with you because it echoes what most Christians wouldn't dare to utter. Indeed, as one song says, singing hallelujahs is easy when all things are well. But when one's in the valley of trials and temptations, that's where faith is put to the test, when the hallelujahs are placed under the microscope. And I think a lot of Christians feel and may have felt the way Lewis did during his most grievous times, that no matter how we bang the doors of heaven, all we hear is a bolting of the door, a double bolting even, from the inside.
Have you ever felt that way? I did. And I know there are a lot who feel or have felt the same way. So, we still have a lot to talk about. I may be ending this video short, but surely I will continue on other videos. If you liked the discussions here, please share your thoughts in the comment section. Hope to hear from you and see you on the next video. All blessings.